Welcome to the Xi Omega Chapter's Centennial podcast series, Xi Omega, A Century of Sisterhood and Service. I am Raven L. Hill, president of Xi Omega Chapter, the first and largest graduate chapter of Alpha Kappa Alpha Sorority Incorporated in Washington, D.C. For 100 years, Xi Omega has led with exceptional sisterhood and exemplary service. 2 Alpha Kappa Alpha founders were among the 20 visionaries who chartered our chapter in 1923. Through the years, Xi Omega has been home to several AKA founders, 3 AKA international presidents, and 6 North Atlantic regional directors. From our original 20 charter members to now almost 700 members, we are committed to continuing our legacy of sisterhood, scholarship, and service, in line with our mission to meet the needs of a dynamic and ever-changing world. Join us as we travel through the decades, exploring Xi Omega's growth and service legacy in our nation's capital and the global community. Each episode will showcase Xi Omega's contributions through narration, conversations, and interviews with our illustrious chapter members against the backdrop of the culture, politics, and music that encompass the African American experience of those times. So we ask that you sit back, relax, and enjoy as we bring you Xi Omega, A Century of Sisterhood and Service.
Welcome to the 1920s. Often called the Roaring Twenties, this decade is synonymous with the Jazz Age and the Harlem Renaissance. During this time, Negro intellectuals, writers, musicians, and artists showcased their works, raising the consciousness of their people. Historian, author, and activist W.E.B. Du Bois instills pride in Negroes and emerges as a leading thinker of the times. Perhaps one of his best-known works was his essay, The Talented Tenth, regarding the challenges facing Negroes.
The Negro race, like all races, is going to be saved by its exceptional men. The problem of education, then, among Negroes must first deal with the talented 10th. It is the problem of developing the best, this race, that they may guide the mass away from the contamination and death of the worst in their own and other races.
The 1920s blessed America with some of the greatest and most lasting music and musicians. Jazz, blues, and swing were among the most popular genres, with jazz in a lane of its own. Among the many talented musicians who flourished in the 1920s was Washington, D.C.'s native son, Edward Kennedy Ellington. Duke Ellington entertained audiences throughout the world. He remembered and paid homage to his hometown, even naming one of his bands the Washingtonians. The District of Columbia honored Duke Ellington by naming the city's only public high school specializing in the arts as Duke Ellington School of the Arts. In 1920s America, Washington, D.C. was home to a flourishing Negro middle class, which made up nearly a third of the city's population. Still, racism and inequality plagued the nation's capital, as it did throughout the rest of the country, with neighborhoods, schools, and private institutions segregated across the city. However, the federal government had been integrated in the early days of Reconstruction and continued to be so up to President Woodrow Wilson's arrival at the White House. Making up at least 10% of the federal workforce, Negro federal workers had the professional opportunities and resources to build a network of thriving, though segregated, educational and communal institutions in Washington, D.C.
I see the light, the pink and green.
Alpha Kappa Alpha sorority was founded on the campus of Howard University in Washington, D.C. on January 15th, 1908, making it the oldest Greek letter organization established by Negro college-educated women. The 16 founders, led by Ethel Hedgeman, were among the fewer than 1,000 Negroes enrolled in higher education institutions in 1908, and were among the 25 women who received Bachelor of Arts degrees from Howard University between 1908 and 1911. Alpha Kappa Alpha sorority, aka, was founded on 5 basic tenets that have remained unchanged since the sorority's inception: to cultivate and encourage high scholastic and ethical standards, to promote unity and friendship among college women, to study and help alleviate problems concerning girls and women in order to improve their social stature, to maintain a progressive interest in college life, and to be of service to all mankind. In 1912, in order to preserve AKA's name, colors, symbols, and motto, then-President Nellie Mae Quander formed a committee to seek incorporation. On January 29, 1913, the sorority was incorporated under the laws of the District of Columbia, becoming Alpha Kappa Alpha Sorority Incorporated, and thereby guaranteeing its perpetuity. When the Ku Klux Klan rallied at the United States Capitol and marched down Pennsylvania Avenue, women of Alpha Kappa Alpha said, "Enough." AKA members living in Washington, D.C. observed Negroes throughout the city, struggling with poor health care, substandard housing, and police brutality. These members were nurses, librarians, and teachers. Many of the teachers worked together at Dunbar Senior High School, Garnet Patterson Junior High School, and Banneker Junior High School. On December 23, 1923, 20 women come together to charter Xi Omega chapter of Alpha Kappa Alpha Sorority Incorporated. Xi Omega became the 33rd chapter of AKA and the first graduate chapter in Washington, D.C. 2 of Xi Omega's charter members, Norma Elizabeth Boyd and Carrie Snowden, were also founders of Alpha Kappa Alpha Sorority Incorporated. Xi Omega's 1920s programs focused on the key issues that lead to the chapter's chartering. They worked on the most crucial needs of the Black community related to employment, health care, and education. 38 women have served as president of Xi Omega chapter. During the decade of the 1920s, these 4 women helped build Xi Omega. Harriet B. Allen, 1923 to 1925, was a charter member and Xi Omega's first president. Under her leadership, the chapter dedicated itself to advocating for better health care, improved housing, job opportunities, and eradication of police brutality. The second president of the chapter, Norma Elizabeth Boyd, served 1925 to 1927. She was a founder and incorporator of Alpha Kappa Alpha sorority and charter member of Xi Omega chapter. She was a staunch supporter of human rights and civic engagement. Norma Boyd was the longest living founder of AKA and is buried in Washington, D.C. B. Beatrix Scott, Xi Omega's third president, served from 1927 to 1928. She went on to become the fifth national president of Alpha Kappa Alpha Sorority Incorporated. Jenny T. Wilder closed out the decade as the fourth president of Xi Omega, serving from 1928 to 1929. Her administration supported scholarship and improved health care. From 20 charter members in 1923 to almost 700 members today, the women of Xi Omega chapter have worked diligently to respond to the community's needs and to be of service to all mankind. And now, let us pay homage to our 20 charter members by speaking their names.
Harriet B. Allen, Norma C. Bacchus, Norma Elizabeth Boyd, Ruth Brinkley, Julia E. Brooks, Bernice B. Brown, Carolyn Calloway, Ruth Weatherless Cook, Adelaide Cook Daly, Ethel C. Harris Grubbs, Lucy M. Holmes, Bessie Stevenson Pinner, Irene Miller Reed, Jessie Hailstock Roy, B. Beatrix Scott, May S. Hunley Skinner, Carrie E. Snowden, Gladys Tolliver, Cornelia Ward, Ethel Wilkinson.
The charter members of Xi Omega chapter. A century of sisterhood and service. The decade of the 20s is brought to you by Alpha Kappa Alpha Sorority Incorporated, Xi Omega chapter. Executive producer, Ayana Roche. Director of Research, Bonnie Jones Moon. Content producer, Jasmine Stevens. Special thanks to Jamal Whitfield. Podcast theme by Paul Bailey with the Howard University Jazz Ensemble under the direction of Fred Irby III. Technical production, Ashley Donald. I am Diane Johnson.
This is Xi Omega President Raven L. Hill again to thank you for listening to this month's episode of the Xi Omega Centennial Podcast, A Century of Sisterhood and Service. We hope you found it informative as well as entertaining, and that you will recommend it to your family and friends. We have dedicated a great deal of time to ensure that our Centennial events are thought-provoking and interesting, and we hope you will have an opportunity to see some of the activities we have planned. To stay up to date with our calendar of events, please follow us on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter, and online at akaxo.org. Don't forget to join us for next month's podcast episode on the 23rd as we continue our Centennial journey from 1923 to 2023.